Well, it's a nasty January 22nd day here, so I think it might be a good day to sit here by the stove where it's warm and reading this book, The Borrowers, now by Mary Norton. I think we're on chapter 11 is where I got to, so that's where I'm going to start at. Give me a deep breath here. Chapter 11. Homily was there at the gate to meet them. She had tidied her hair and smelled of cold tar soap. She looked younger and somehow excited. Well, she kept saying, well, taking the bag from Arietta and helping Pod to fasten the gate. Well, was it nice? Were you a good girl? Was the cherry tree out? Did the clock strike? She seemed in the dim light to be trying to read the expression on Arietta's face. Come along now, tea's all ready. Give me your hand. Tea was indeed ready, laid on the round table in the sitting room with the bright fire burning in the cogwheel. How familiar the room seemed, and homely, but suddenly somehow strange. The firelight flickered on the wallpaper, the line which read, "It would be so charming if what?" Arietta always wondered. If our house were less dark, she thought, that would be charming. She looked at the homemade dip set in upturned drawing pins, which Homily had placed as candle holders among the tea things. The old teapot, a hollow oak apple with its quill spout and wired-on handle, burnished it was now and hard with age. There were 2 roast sliced chestnuts, which they would eat like toast with butter, and a cold boiled chestnut with which Pod would cut like bread. There was a plate of hot dried currants well plumped before the fire. There were cinnamon breadcrumbs, crispy golden and lightly dredged with sugar, and in front of each plate, oh, delight of delights, a single potted shrimp. Homily had put out the silver plates, the florin ones for herself and Arietta, and the half-crown one for Pod. Come along, Arietta, if you've washed your hands, exclaimed Homily, taking up the teapot. Don't dream. Arietta drew up a cotton spool and sat down slowly. She watched her mother pulling on the spout of the teapot. This was always an interesting moment, the thicker end of the quill being inside the teapot. A slight pull just before pouring would draw it tightly into the hole and thus prevent a leak. If, as sometimes happened, a trace of dampness appeared about the joint, it only meant a rather harder pull and sudden gentle twist. Well, said Homily, gingerly pouring, tell us what you saw. She didn't see so much, said Pod, cutting himself a slice of boiled chestnut to eat with his shrimp. Didn't she see the overmantel? No, said Pod, we never went into the morning room. What about my blotting paper? I never got it. Let me show you they're sitting at their meal. I never got it, said Pod. Now that's a nice thing, began Homily. Maybe, said Pod, munching steadily, but I had the feeling I had it bad. What's that? Asked Arietta, his feeling. Up the back of his head and into his fingers, said Homily. It's the feeling your father gets when, she dropped her voice, there's someone about. Oh, said Arietta, and seemed to shrink. That's why I brought her along home, said Pod. And was there anyone? Asked Homily anxiously. Pod took a mouthful of shrimp. Must have been, he said, but I didn't see nothing. Homily leaned across the table. Did you have any feeling, Arietta? Arietta started. Oh, she said, do we all have it? Well, not in the same place, said Homily. Mine starts at the back of me ankles and then me knees go. My mother, hers used to start just under her chin and run right around her neck. And tied in a bow at the back, said Pod, munching. No, Pod, protested Homily. It's a fact. No seemed to be sarcastic. All the bell pulls were like that, like a collar, she said it was. Let me put this away. The dog wants it. And I'm not playing right now. I'm reading. Like a caller said it was. Pity it didn't choke her, said Pod. Now, Pod, be fair. She had her points. Points, said Pod. She was all points. Arietta moistened her lip. She glanced nervously from Pod to Homily. I didn't feel anything, she said. Well, said Homily, perhaps it was a false alarm. Oh, no, began Arietta, it wasn't. And as Homily glanced at her sharply, she faltered. I mean, if Papa felt something, perhaps, she went on, I don't have it. Well, said Homily, you're young. It'll come, all in good time. You go and stand in our kitchen just under the chute. When Mrs. Driver's raking out the stove upstairs, stand right up on the stool or something so you're fairly near the ceiling. It'll come with practice. After tea, when Pod had gone to his workbench and Homily was washing up, Arietta rushed to her diary. I'll just open it, she thought, trembling with haste. Anywhere. It fell open to the 9th and 10th of July. Talk of camps, but stay at home. Old Cameron colors in Glasgow Cathedral, 1885. Dog's bothering me. That's what it said for the 9th. And on the 10th, the page was headed, Make hay while the sun shines. Snowden Peak sold for... Am I going to have to stop reading and play with this dog? I don't think so. Just a little bit more left in this chapter. Hush, Heidi. Let me finish this chapter. Arietta tore out this last page. Turning it over, she read on the reverse side, July the 11th, make not a toil of your pleasure. Niagara passed by C.D. Graham in a cask, 1886. No, she thought, I'll choose the 10th. Make hay while the sun shines. And crossing out her last entry, Mother out of sorts, she wrote below it. Dear Uncle Hendreary, I hope you're quite well and the cousins are well and ain't loopy. We are very well and I'm learning to borrow. Your loving niece, Arietta Clock. Write a letter on the back, please. What are you doing, Arietta? Called Homily from the kitchen. Writing in my diary. Oh, said Homily shortly. Anything you want, asked Arietta. I'll do later, said Homily. It'll do later, said Homily. Arietta folded the letter and placed it carefully between the pages of Bryce's Tom Thumb Gazetter of the World, and in the diary she wrote, went borrowing, wrote to H, talked to B. After that, Arietta sat for a long time staring into the fire and thinking and thinking and thinking. There she is writing her letter. And I've got to do something with my little house doggy here. She brought me the toy to play with, and I didn't want to play, so I laid it up, and now she's whining and wanting it, and I'm going to have to get up and get it. I know you want your toy, don't you? She wants her toy. You want me to get it? You want me to get it? She wants me to get it. All right, we'll read. When we come back, we'll read chapter 12. Bye, y'all.